Terrifying voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. Ooh, oh, you say I am low, but I can't feel a thing. And you say I am strong, when I think I am weak. And you say I am held, when I am falling short. When I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours. And I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe the only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I find my worth, in you I find my identity. Oh, and you say I am low, but I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong, when I think I am weak. And you say I am held, when I am falling short. When I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours. And I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. Oh, I believe. Taking all I have and now I'm laying it at your feet. Oh, you have every failure, God. You'll have every victory. Oh, and you say I am low, when I can't feel a thing. And you say I am strong, when I think I am weak. And you say I am held, when I am falling short. When I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours. I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe, oh, I believe, yes, I believe what you say of me. I believe.
There is this somebody who comes in your life, who sees the potential in you. He unlocks the potential so that it can be beneficial to yourself and beneficial to the world and your community. And this is what the New Vision School of Leadership is doing. This is the platform where I've been able to understand myself better, to understand why I was born, to understand the kind of potential that I have as a person and as a leader. And I thank Coach Bonfas and Roger Webb for this initiative of empowering Kenyan students to be leaders of change, living a life with a goal. why you have goals to accomplish. You have long-term goals, you have short-term goals. And the short-term goals, they will act like the stepping stones to accomplish the bigger dreams that you have, to accomplish the things that you want to have in your life. And therefore, having a goal in life, it's very, very important. What have stood out since I joined this college, it's about goal setting. I came to learn that everybody in life was born with a purpose. But sometimes you may fail to understand that your assignment, you may fail to understand the kind of potential that you have. My dream and my goal is to see that my society, to see that my country, to see that the nations, they are really living a good life and a comfortable life. It's all it's brought about by leadership. Therefore, if at all we have good leadership in our nations, everything else will become possible. I'm Daniel Washira Minor, and not that I'm born again and I love Christ. I'm a student at Kenya University, third year, pursuing Bachelor of Science in Computer Science.
Yeah, hi everyone. I would like to introduce to you a very good friend all the way from Indiana, Dr. Roger Webb. Some of you have taken his class. He's an excellent, dynamic teacher. He brings us so much wealth and knowledge, and I just love the way he makes the teaching so practical, applicable, understandable, and we have loved to have him on board. He's actually one of our mentors and coach. And last year he had the opportunity of going to Kenya and speaking at our conference, speaking both to the youth and the leaders over in Sabasaba. He has traveled to over 40 countries, and he's worked for corporate America in sales and management. In fact, his major is on strategic planning. And so we feel so honored for him to be a part of this program. He's ready to train you, to equip you. And so we do give him a warm welcome, and God bless you for being here with us. Thank you.
Hey, good day, New Vision School of Leadership students, those who are signed up for the conference entitled Defining Your Destiny. Glad to be with you. My name is Roger Webb. Some of you, of course, we know, having been in Kenya with you last year in June in Sabasaba for a couple of days with the college students and then 3 days with other leaders in Kenya. For some of you also, you have been a part of the classes on goal setting or time management. Glad to be with you now, at least in kind of a semi face-to-face way. Of course, we would have been with you last month, had not been hit by this virus, but we're doing the best we can here in terms of communicating. Excited again to be with you. Very, very honored to be a part of this and all this that Bonifas is doing, the vision God gave him a number of years ago. Let me just say something quickly as we start about that. Bonifas I've known for a number of years, but we sat down probably 4 years ago now. He shared his vision with me about impacting young people. Now, I eat, breathe, and sleep leadership. I fully believe that, as the statement goes, everything rises and falls with leadership. So when he shared with me his vision to impact high school, college students as catalyst, and I'll use that term, I think I used that term last summer when I was with you personally there in Sabasaba. Catalyst means an agent that can cause sudden and lasting ongoing change. And we believe you are potential catalyst leaders, not only for Kenya, but in some cases, probably other nations of the world. And by the way, Bonifas informed me this week there are about 100 registrants for this conference on defining your destiny. Of course, mainly in Kenya, but outside of that nation as well, too. I know we have 2 students from Rwanda. Welcome to you, and maybe others from other nations. Welcome. But when Bonifas shared that vision, that was really all I needed to hear, because my passion, again, is leadership and certainly wanting to impact young people that have the potential to be change agents within their nation. So we had hoped to get to Kenya a couple of years prior to last summer, but that was the first time we were able to do that with the circumstances. So I'm excited to be with you. My wife Tish, as you've seen probably from the flyer on the conference, will be sharing one session as well too. While the conference title is Defining Your Destiny, Bonifas gave me a little bit more specific in terms of what he wanted me to try to address in these two sessions that I have. The basic thrust was, if now I'm decades removed from the period of time that I was a college student like yourself, or just entering into the work arena after college or university. And what would I do differently had I known at 22 or 23 what I know now? So I'm going to try to, in my two sessions, address that a little bit. The first one is on the foundation of self-confidence. I think a crucial issue, as especially you begin the journey in life in terms of career and development, and again, being that catalyst leader that we believe you are. Let me give you a couple of verses to start with. I know you all do not have the notes that we'll be operating from in terms of these sessions, so let me give you a couple of passages. I come from, as certainly as Boniface does as well, from a kingdom of God perspective in terms of really everything, but certainly in terms of leadership. It says in Hebrews chapter 3, verse 6, "But Christ as a son over his own house, whose house we are," watch this now, "if we hold fast the confidence and rejoicing of the hope firm to the end." Let me read another one from Hebrews chapter 10. "Therefore do not cast away your confidence." Do not cast away your confidence. So very simply what that says is that it is possible even to have grasped confidence, gained some measure of confidence, and cast that away. I'll talk that a little bit about that in just a second in my own personal life in an example. "For we have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise." I come from a very small county in the state of Indiana here in the U.S. Very small in land, geographic mass, and certainly very small in terms of population, one of the smallest within the state of Indiana. So I come from a farming community, was raised for the most of my life on a farm there in southeastern Indiana. I was blessed with a fairly good measure of athletic ability that led me to be able to go to university to play baseball. I know that's not a big sport within the state or within the nation of Kenya and Africa as a whole, but it enabled me to go to university to play baseball. I was on a scholarship there at that school. So why do I bring that up? Because again, coming from a very small school, a very small community in which I had a great measure of success as an athlete and student for that matter as well too. So I go to university, and then in specific, when it comes to baseball, I found very quickly that there was a myriad of other men who could play baseball with excellence. So there was a period of time early on in which I began to cast away the confidence in that particular area. Just one anecdote. I remember on my first trip, what we call spring break trips, to go south to play in the beginning of the season of baseball. My very first experience, we got off of our bus in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and it was an old stadium, but it had been a very large stadium for what at that time would have been AAA baseball. So some greats, historic greats, had played there on their way up to the major leagues. And I remember getting off of that bus on that Saturday morning, our baseball cleats, the spikes, hitting that concrete entryway into the stadium, and my confidence evaporated at that moment. So you can cast away your confidence. Let me give you the meaning of the word confidence in that passages that we just read. Watch this now. Freedom in speaking. That's one definition. Unreservedness, not being reserved in our approach and our conduct and life and speaking. In speech, openly, frankly, without concealment and without ambiguity. That's a broad definition or definitions of confidence. The British or English writer and poet Shakespeare said this: "There's nothing either good or bad." I would disagree with that, but let's listen to the last of what he says. He says there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. There's nothing either good or bad. Now that part's I would disagree with, but his point is that thinking makes it so. So what we think, how we have or do not have confidence in our life. Here's a principle. Those of you who have either been with me in the teachings on goals and time management, but certainly last summer when we were live with you in Saba Saba, I'm a very principle teacher in terms of life, but certainly in leadership as well. Principles just simply mean they're consistent. It makes no difference whether it's Kenya or the United States. It makes no difference whether you're old, you're young, have money, don't have a lot of money, where your background was or wasn't. Principles remain the same. Let me give you a first one here in this particular session. Every person is in an ongoing process of becoming or unfolding and growing. So even though in the case of all of you are young, either late teenagers or early 20-something, what you have become at this point, what I've become after certainly years later, more than that, are the result of the good, the bad, and sometimes the very ugly in our life. Not only, more importantly, what happened to us, but what happens in us as a result of that. So we're in the process of becoming. And that is, we're becoming and unfolding in the exact direction of our dominant thoughts. Watch that now, of our dominant thoughts. It's what is called the law of concentration, which simply means anything you dwell on grows in your reality. So, why is that important? Why is that crucial? Because if there's not this underpinning of confidence about who you are, if you think, for instance, if I'm always gripped by fear when I try to approach a new setting, when you are launching out now in career, maybe you will have worked for a period of time, and your work presents to your employer, your boss, your supervisor, that you could be promoted. But when that position is offered to you, fear may cause you to step back and say, I don't think I could do that. Well, I'm sure I couldn't do that and do it well, so I'll refrain from even taking that position offered to me, because I dwell on that is, quite frankly, not true in terms of my life, but erosion of confidence would cause me to react and respond in a way that really creates my own reality. You've probably heard the term, certainly it's used here in the United States, that man or that woman is a self-made man or woman, meaning that they didn't inherit their money or career because the father had already established the business and it was very successful and they just kind of walked into it. Self-made would mean they didn't have any of that. They didn't have the money necessary to start. They didn't have the position, the inheritance basis, and they just made it on their own. Well, let me say this. In reality, all of us are self-made men and women. Again, circumstances, situations that encroach in on us, that frame us up in terms of life, the good, the bad, and as I often say, sometimes the very ugly, it makes us. And what we do with that or don't do with those ends up making all of us self-made. Watch this now. Thoughts are creative. It has been said, thoughts held in the mind produce after their own kind. Thoughts held in the mind will produce after their own kind. Now, second principle, you cannot hold continually to one kind of thought and experience a different reality. Let me say that again. You cannot hold in your mind, at least on a continuous basis, one kind of thought and then expect to experience a different reality. So if, again, back to that example, I probably will use this one throughout this first session on fear. If I fear that I couldn't do that, if I hold to that continually, then I would be mistaken to believe that somehow I will experience a different reality from that continual thought of fear grips me. I don't have the confidence to do that or approach that. Your inner life determines your outer life. That is a just simple, absolute principle. Your inner life is going to determine your outer life. The outer life is going to correspond in harmony with what is going on in our inner lives, at least on a consistent basis. Our outer life is going to correspond in harmony with what's happening in our inner life, what we think, because watch this now, what I think will cause me to believe certain things. Those beliefs will cause me also to say certain things, and that will ultimately result in me acting certain ways. So it's thinking, believing, acting. We'll address how that can be also reversed for the positive in just a second. If we're going to hold on to and walk in confidence, especially as it relates to leadership, because we're talking to you as 100 potential catalyst leaders for your nations. If we're going to hold on to and walk in that confidence as leaders, we will have to practice complete integrity on the inside. Now, I don't have enough time to unwrap all as it regards to integrity, but if I ask you today, how would you define integrity? You would say, well, truth, truthfulness, consistency. Certainly those are a part of integrity, but let me give you a broader understanding of what integrity is. By definition, according to the dictionary, means perfect, undivided. Watch that now, undivided. I don't think and feel that fear is functioning all the time, and yet try to function not in fear, in boldness in taking the new position, boldness in making recommendations for the change in that situation at your work or school, etc. So undivided, complete, unified. Again, not split open, as it were. A single whole, W-H-O-L-E, a single whole without blemish or fault. So again, undivided, complete, unified, a single whole. Whenever, another principle, whenever we violate or compromise our integrity for anything, there seems to be a great power or force of retribution that will not allow us to get away with that. There is the need for absolute integrity seems to require that we live in truth. What does, of course, we are coming from a kingdom biblical basis. What does the Word of God, what does God say about me as His child, or want to be His child? For our discussion, that would be living in truth as we see it and as we are as leaders again. Let me give you yet another principle. True values are only expressed in our actions. It's what we do. So again, always remember that what ultimately we do will trump at times what we think. Because we could say or say that we believe that I can do this, I can accomplish this, I can achieve this. But if then in turn our actions are contrary to that, listen, our actions are going to win out. That default to actions are always trump, in this case, our feelings. So true values are always expressed in our actions, what we do. Let me give you this law of reversibility. I alluded to that just a second ago. This little known mental principle says that just as thoughts and feelings lead to actions consistent with them. So again, if my thoughts and feelings do not convey confidence, then my actions will probably follow that. Well, let me say that stronger. If we hold to those on a consistent basis of a lack of confidence, fear, I come from a family that was never successful in that, therefore it's unlikely that I will ever be successful in that. Those held constantly are going to produce something. They always do. So they'll lead to actions consistent with them. The principle is reversible, and actions consistent with particular values or beliefs actually lead to thoughts and feelings. Let me try to slowly unwrap that for you. What the law of reversibility says, that if I can, as it were, fight through to act even though it's contrary to what I'm thinking at that given moment. Let's say, back to that example I gave you, you're approached by your employer, your supervisor. They've watched you work for a period of months or longer, and they say, we believe you can take this new position with the organization. Now, initially, because, again, the frame up of life that has been our life, fear immediately grips us and we think we can't do it. Just as it was, as I said, when I got off that bus in Chattanooga, Tennessee, getting to walk into this big stadium to play for the very first time as a college baseball player, I thought, I can't do this. I can't do this. But I went ahead, onto the field, warmed up, and so on. So what this is saying, the law of reversibility says that if you fear that you couldn't do that new position because it's going to require things that you don't think you're capable of doing at that moment. If you just boldly say, yes, I will take this, I'm going to start next Monday, and I'll do it, even though fear may be gripping that you cannot do it. So what the law of reversibility says that actions can ultimately reverse thoughts and feelings that would have triggered those actions. Here's what this principle means. If you deliberately act as if you already have that quality, not fearing, not disbelieving that I couldn't do that, in this example, you will eventually create within yourself the mental quality that corresponds with that action. Let me say that again. This principle means if I deliberately act as if I already have that quality. The great leadership trainer, Dr. John Maxwell, says very often we have to act ourselves into feelings, not wait to have feelings result in action. Very often we are going to have to act ourselves into feelings. So if you deliberately, underscore that, deliberately act as you already have that quality, you will eventually create within yourself the mental quality that corresponds to that action. In other words, fear is going to dissipate, and I will certainly feel like I can do that because I've acted like I could do it. Here's what Dr. William James says. He is a professor from the prestigious school here in the United States in Boston called Harvard University. He puts it this way. Action seems to follow feelings, but really action and feelings go together. And by regulating the action, which is under more direct control, what Dr. James is saying is that sometimes our feelings don't seem to be able to be under control. We're just getting them. But our actions can be more regulated because it's under more direct control of our own personal will. We can indirectly regulate the feeling which is not under our direct control. Does that make sense? He is saying that actions and feelings can go together, and if I act like I can take and do, be a success, and accomplish this new position, then feelings will follow of that. Here's the act as if principle. The act as if principle, especially as it relates to confidence. The more we act the part, especially when we demonstrate these qualities under stress, that is the time where the real truth of this lives out, is when we're under stress. What will we do, even though we may be thinking something absolutely different when that stress comes? You're offered that new position and stress hits you that says, oh, I'm not sure I can do this, but we act as if we can. Under stress are when you feel like doing or saying something else. The more rapidly these qualities become a permanent part of our mental makeup. So the more rapidly these qualities are going to become a part of who you and I are when we respond accordingly. There's the principle of resistance. Let me give you an example. I know from the answers I get to some of the questions and the exercises that you have done of those of you who have taken the goals course or the time management now that we have been doing, I get feedback from many of you that exercise is a very important part of your life. So let me give you an example of that from the natural as it relates to the principle of resistance. I'm sure some of you men and women are involved with weightlifting or resistance training. I am still to this day. Almost every day I do some form of resistance training, just simply to keep muscles strong and healthy. But in weightlifting, let's use the example of a bench press. That bar comes off the standards. It is going to come down upon your chest if you do not do what? You resist. So as that comes down, you're resisting that weight and pressing it back up. That works in terms of, let's apply it now to how this works from a mental principle standpoint. Whenever you exert self-mastery and discipline yourself to do or say the right thing, again, especially under stress, you create resistance to your natural tendencies. So again, let's stay with this example I've been talking about. You are offered this new position. The tendency might be, again, for fear to grip hold of you that you can't do it, but you press against that mentally and certainly in action. That resistance will tend to alter your natural tendencies then to have been fearful, to step back, say I couldn't do it, and so on. This resistance generates friction. This is the same kind of friction or heat that when you apply it to a crucible containing chemicals will cause the chemicals to crystallize and take on a new form. That was a mouthful there, but the reality is says that this friction, again, use the example, you're pushing a weight up, it's changing the composition in the natural basis, changing the composition of your body. So in the natural realm, if heat is applied, friction, to a crucible with chemicals in it, they will crystallize and take on a new form. So here's the reality. When you and I resist, this principle of resistance to give in to how we might feel, having confidence leave us in this example, we take on a new form. We're really and truly being changed for the better. Whenever you create mental friction by resisting our natural tendencies, I can't do this, I wouldn't have the money for that, and on and on and on, you fill in the blank. Instead, doing what you know is right and true, that's integrity again, your highest values, especially in a difficult situation, that mental heat or friction causes your values to crystallize at a higher level, and eventually it becomes a permanent part of your character. In this case, confidence. This is the underpinning of confidence. My desire for you, as many of you, of course, now still students in college and university, but some of you already launching out, at least in part-time basis, to work. So regardless of whether it's pharmacy or whether it's politics or whether it's banking, whether it's education, whether it's farming that you're going to go into as a catalyst leader for your nation and the nations, hold on to that confidence, push against, again, the resistance that comes against you and fear, or I couldn't do this, I'm not equipped to do that. And you will, in that process, be being changed, being formed into who ultimately God has you destined to be and achieving and that defined destiny. Hey, glad to be with you in this first session. Look forward to being with you again in the second session.